Evelyn was standing in the kitchen with a knife in her hand when she realized she had been staring at the wall too long. The turkey was already in the oven, slowly drying out. The clock ticked louder than it ever had before. Christmas Eve had started without asking if she was ready. The house smelled like rosemary, butter, and old memories. Every surface was clean, too clean, almost untouched. No coats by the door, no voices in the hallway. She felt like a guest inside her own life, and she hated how familiar that feeling had become. She turned on the radio just to break the silence. A carol began, soft and cheerful, completely misplaced. Her chest tightened, and she turned it off again. Some sounds made the quiet worse instead of better. Tonight, silence felt more honest than music. Evelyn told herself this was just another night. She had survived harder things than an empty table. Divorce papers, moving boxes, unanswered phone calls. Still, Christmas had a way of reopening sealed doors, and behind them lived everything she tried not to feel. She reached for a glass and noticed her hands trembling, not from fear, but from something closer to grief. This was the first Christmas she hadn't planned around others. No schedules, no compromises, no pretending, just her and the truth she kept avoiding. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows softly. Snow had started falling, slow and deliberate. The world looked peaceful, almost forgiving. Inside, Evelyn felt anything but calm. Something was shifting, though she couldn't name it yet. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Just get through the night," she thought. "Morning will come like it always does." She didn't know then that the night had other plans, plans that would not leave her untouched. As Evelyn peeled potatoes, memories slipped in quietly. Her children running through the house in mismatched pajamas, her ex-husband complaining about the gravy every year, the noise, the chaos, the exhaustion she once resented. Now she would have given anything to hear it again. She remembered burning her hand one Christmas, laughing anyway. Someone always forgot to buy cranberry sauce. Someone always arrived late, full of apologies. Those small annoyances had been proof of life, proof that she had belonged somewhere once. The knife moved slower as her thoughts grew heavier. She wondered when exactly everything had changed. There was no single moment she could blame, just a series of quiet goodbyes over the years, each one polite, each one permanent. Her phone lay face down on the counter. No notifications, no missed calls, no messages. She resisted the urge to check it again. Silence from others felt worse when acknowledged, so she pretended it didn't exist. Evelyn carried the potatoes to the sink. The water ran too loud in the quiet kitchen. She leaned against the counter, suddenly tired. Not physically, but deep in her bones. The kind of tired sleep never fixes. She asked herself if this was what 52 looked like. Independence disguised as isolation. Freedom tangled with loneliness. She had wanted space. Once she never meant to disappear inside it. Somewhere in the house, a faint sound echoed. So subtle she almost missed it. She froze, listening, heart beating faster. The house had always been predictable before. Tonight, it felt strangely alert. Evelyn told herself the sound was nothing. Old houses made noises, especially in winter. Pipes expanded, wood shifted, wind whispered. She forced herself to keep moving. Stopping meant letting fear grow roots. The oven timer went off too early. She hadn't set it that way. Her breath caught, irrational but real. She checked it twice, then 3 times. Everything looked normal, yet she wasn't convinced. She wiped her hands on a towel repeatedly. Her mind raced to worst-case scenarios. Living alone had sharpened her imagination. Every unfamiliar sound became suspicious. Every shadow carried unnecessary weight. She walked through the hallway slowly. Lights off, floors creaking beneath her steps. Her reflection followed her in dark windows. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Older, yes, but mostly guarded. In the living room, nothing was out of place. The tree lights blinked softly in the corner. Gifts she bought herself sat unopened beneath it. Practical things, nothing wrapped with hope. She wondered why that suddenly hurt. Another sound came, clearer this time. A soft movement near the back of the house. Not mechanical, not random. Human, maybe, or something close to it. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Evelyn stood completely still. Every instinct told her to ignore it. Call someone. Lock a door. Stay safe. But another voice, quieter, urged her forward. It asked her not to turn away again. She reached the back door cautiously. The glass was fogged from the cold outside. Snow clung to the steps in uneven patches. Evelyn wiped a circle with her sleeve. What she saw made her inhale sharply. A figure sat on the steps, barely moving, wrapped in a thin coat, shoulders shaking, young, fragile, unmistakably human. The girl looked up, eyes wide with fear. Neither of them spoke at first. Evelyn opened the door just a crack. Cold air rushed in, biting her skin. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice unsteady. The girl shook her head slowly. Tears froze on her cheeks. "My name is Lily," the girl whispered. Her voice sounded like it might break apart. "I didn't know where else to go." Evelyn felt something collapse inside her. A wall she had spent years building. She noticed Lily's hands were swollen and red, her breathing shallow, her posture defensive. This wasn't a threat. This was desperation wearing a young face, and it terrified Evelyn in a different way. Every instinct screamed to call the police, to let someone else handle it. Responsibility felt heavy, almost dangerous, but leaving her there felt impossible. Some choices refused to be postponed. Evelyn opened the door wider. "Come inside," she said quietly, not as a command, but an offering. Lily hesitated, then stepped forward, and the night shifted with that single step. The warmth inside hit Lily immediately. She flinched, as if unused to comfort. Evelyn closed the door gently behind them. The house seemed to exhale in response. Neither of them mentioned the silence. Evelyn handed Lily a blanket without thinking. Their fingers brushed, quick and uncertain. Lily clutched it like something sacred. "Thank you," she murmured, eyes down, gratitude mixed with disbelief in her voice. They stood in the kitchen awkwardly, two strangers sharing the same fragile moment. Evelyn noticed Lily's belly beneath the coat, pregnant, very pregnant. The realization landed softly but deeply. "I can make you something warm," Evelyn said. "Soup, tea, anything" felt suddenly important. Lily nodded, tears slipping silently. She didn't ask questions. She didn't explain herself yet. As Evelyn stirred the pot, she felt different, focused, present, strangely calm. The noise in her head had quieted. For the first time that night, she wasn't alone, and that realization frightened her almost as much as it soothed. Lily sat at the table, watching carefully, like someone afraid the moment might disappear. Evelyn recognized that look instantly. She had worn it herself for years. That recognition tightened her throat. Outside, snow continued to fall steadily. Inside, something fragile had begun forming. Not a solution, not a miracle, just a pause in the loneliness. And sometimes, that is enough to begin. Evelyn kept the spoon moving in the pot as if motion could keep fear from catching up to her. The house felt smaller now, not because of Lily's presence, but because Evelyn could no longer pretend she lived in it alone. She watched the steam rise and tried to decide whether she was doing something kind or something reckless. Her mind offered a list of warnings in the same tone it used during her divorce, calm and cold and convinced it was right. And beneath all of that, a softer feeling insisted that this girl did not choose her doorstep by accident. Lily's teeth chattered even after the blanket settled around her shoulders like a second skin. She held her hands close to her belly, not protectively, but instinctively, as if the baby was the only truth she trusted. Her eyes kept drifting to the door, as if someone might burst through it and demand she return to wherever she had escaped from. Evelyn noticed bruised fatigue under Lily's eyes, the kind that comes from many nights without real sleep or safety. It wasn't the cold that frightened Evelyn most. It was the shape of Lily's exhaustion, because it looked familiar. Evelyn placed a mug of tea in front of her and sat down across the table with careful slowness. She didn't want to crowd Lily, and she didn't want to act like a savior, because she had never believed in heroes anyway. For a moment they only listened to the heater click and hum, the small mechanical sounds that proved the house was still working. Evelyn wondered if her own heart was still working in the same way, or if it had been running on habit. Then Lily whispered, almost embarrassed, "I'm sorry," as if being in need was a personal failure. "You don't have to be sorry for being alive," Evelyn said, and surprised herself with the steadiness in her voice. The words felt older than the moment, like something she had wanted to tell her younger self decades ago. Lily stared at her, as if waiting for the sentence to turn into a lecture, or a condition, or a hidden price. Evelyn didn't add anything quickly, because she knew how fragile trust could be when it had been broken too often. Instead, she simply stayed there, letting the warmth and the silence do part of the talking. Lily's shoulders dropped by an inch, the smallest surrender. the kind that happens before tears. My mom said I ruined Christmas, Lily said, and her voice was so flat it sounded practiced, like she'd repeated it to herself. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten, because the cruelty of that sentence was sharp enough to cut through any holiday decoration. Outside, the snow continued to fall with quiet patience, as if the world didn't care who was forgiven and who was exiled. Evelyn reached for her phone, not to call someone, but to check the weather, because she needed a reason to breathe. "You can stay here tonight," Evelyn said finally, and she made the sentence simple so it could not be misunderstood. Lily's eyes filled instantly, but she wiped them fast, as if tears were another thing she had been punished for. Evelyn didn't ask for details yet, because she could feel Lily's story pressing against the inside of her like a bruise. There was time for explanations, time for decisions, time for the daylight to make everything look more practical and less sacred. For now, all Evelyn offered was shelter, and the strange, trembling promise of being seen. Evelyn stood up and opened the hall closet, pulling out clean towels and an old sweatshirt she rarely wore anymore. As she handed them over, she realized she was not performing kindness. She was remembering how to live like a human again. Lily took the items with shaking hands, and the gratitude in her face was so intense it almost looked like pain. Evelyn pointed toward the bathroom and said, "Take your time," as if time itself was a gift she could finally give. When Lily walked away, Evelyn remained in the kitchen, listening to the quiet, knowing the night had truly begun. While Lily showered, Evelyn moved through the house as if she were walking through a memory she didn't fully trust. She straightened pillows that didn't need straightening and wiped a countertop already cleaned, because anxiety begged for tasks. Every few seconds she caught herself listening for footsteps, not from Lily, but from the past, as if the past might return uninvited. She thought of her children's rooms upstairs, untouched now, like museum exhibits devoted to a life that had ended quietly. It occurred to her that she had been living with ghosts for years and had called it independence. Lily returned wearing the oversized sweatshirt, hair damp, cheeks flushed with returning warmth. The sight of her young and frightened, yet trying to appear calm, hit Evelyn with an unexpected tenderness. Evelyn had expected gratitude to feel good, but it didn't. It felt heavy, like a responsibility placed directly into her hands. She gestured toward a chair and tried to smile in a way that didn't look like pity, because pity was another kind of abandonment. Lily sat carefully, as if she feared breaking something that might be taken away from her. They ate soup slowly, spoon by spoon, as if their bodies needed permission to accept comfort. Lily's eyes lingered on the Christmas tree lights, and Evelyn noticed how the colors reflected in her pupils like tiny promises. "You live here alone?" Lily asked, and her question carried more than curiosity. It carried disbelief that a house could be so quiet. Evelyn nodded, then added, "Not always, because the truth had layers, and she wasn't ready to peel them all at once." Lily's gaze softened, as if loneliness was a language she recognized immediately. Evelyn found herself speaking before she planned to, describing her divorce in gentle, non-blaming words. She mentioned how the marriage didn't explode, it simply dissolved, one small disappointment at a time, like sugar in hot tea. She said her kids called, but rarely, because adulthood had swallowed them in a hurry that never seemed to end. Lily listened without interrupting, and Evelyn realized how rare it was to be heard by someone with nowhere else to be. In that listening, Evelyn felt her own story become real again, instead of just something she survived. Lily's hands drifted to her belly, and she swallowed hard, as if deciding whether truth was safe in this kitchen. "I'm 7 months," she said, eyes fixed on the table, and the confession sounded like an apology learned from strangers. Evelyn's throat tightened, not because of the pregnancy, but because of the loneliness that must have surrounded it. "Do you have anyone?" Evelyn asked, and the question came out softer than she expected, like a prayer she didn't believe in. Lily shook her head once, sharp and final, as if the word anyone had been removed from her world. The room held a silence that wasn't empty now. It was full, crowded with things neither of them knew how to name. Evelyn imagined Lily on these snowy streets, searching for a door that wouldn't slam shut, and she felt anger rise like heat. She had spent years blaming herself for not being enough, but seeing Lily made her blame the world for demanding perfection from women. Lily whispered, "I just wanted my mom to look at me like I was still her daughter," and her voice cracked in half. Evelyn's eyes burned, because she understood what it meant to beg for recognition and receive only judgment. Evelyn stood and placed a small plate of cookies on the table, a simple gesture that suddenly felt like a vow. She didn't promise Lily a new life, because promises without power were another way people lied during holidays. She promised something smaller, something she could actually deliver. You'll sleep safely tonight. Lily stared up at her, stunned, as if safety was a concept she had only heard about in movies. And Evelyn realized that this was not charity. This was an invitation to become real again. Evelyn returned to the stove and began finishing the Christmas meal. But now her movements had purpose beyond tradition. The mashed potatoes weren't for an empty table anymore, and the scent of the turkey no longer mocked her with nostalgia. Lily watched from the doorway, and Evelyn could feel the girl's hunger without a single word being spoken. It wasn't only hunger for food, it was hunger for normal, for routine, for a moment that didn't feel like survival. Evelyn understood that kind of hunger, because she had been feeding it with work and silence for years. She set 2 plates on the table, then paused, surprised by how natural the second plate looked. In the past, her family had filled every chair, and she had secretly dreamed of quiet. Now, quiet felt like punishment. She lit 2 candles anyway, not for romance or decoration, but because the flicker made the room feel alive. Lily's eyes followed the flame as if it were a tiny miracle, and Evelyn felt her chest loosen slightly. Sometimes a rebellion looked like nothing more than admitting someone else deserved a seat. When they finally sat down, the first bite was awkward, because intimacy with strangers doesn't arrive fully formed. Lily chewed carefully, eyes darting as if she expected the meal to be interrupted by shouting or shame. Evelyn ate slowly too, noticing how strange it felt to share silence with someone who wasn't angry at her. The clock still ticked, but now it sounded less like accusation and more like accompaniment. Evelyn realized she had been eating alone for so long, she forgot meals could be gentle. Lily spoke in small pieces, like someone offering fragments of a broken glass and hoping the listener wouldn't bleed. She talked about a boyfriend who disappeared the moment responsibility became real, leaving only texts that grew colder each week. She talked about her mother's face tightening when the truth came out, as if love had turned into math and Lily didn't add up. Evelyn listened, and every sentence felt like a door opening onto a world where girls were punished for being human. The air between them filled with grief that didn't need explanation. Evelyn wanted to fix it, because fixing felt safer than feeling. But she stopped herself. She remembered all the times people tried to fix her, offering advice like bandages without cleaning the wound. Instead, she said, "That sounds unbearable," and the honesty of the sentence made Lily's eyes shine with tears. Lily nodded as if permission had been granted for her pain to exist without being argued with. Evelyn felt the room tilt slightly towards something like trust. After dinner, Evelyn brought out a small box of ornaments she hadn't touched in years. They were old, mismatched, some handmade by her kids when they were little, some cracked from careless storage. Lily held a tiny angel ornament and whispered, "My grandma had one like this," and her voice softened for the first time. Evelyn watched the way memory warmed Lily's expression, and she realized memories weren't only weapons, they could be bridges. Together they placed ornaments on the tree, and the act felt like repairing something invisible. Later, Lily laughed at a ridiculous ornament shaped like a pickle, and the sound startled them both. Evelyn's eyes filled instantly, not because the laugh was loud, but because it proved the house could hold joy again. Lily covered her mouth in embarrassment, as if laughter was something she needed to earn back. Evelyn shook her head gently and said, "You don't have to shrink here," and meant every word. And in that moment, Evelyn felt the Christmas lights do what they were always meant to do, remind someone they weren't alone. The night deepened, and with it came the kind of honesty that only arrives when the world goes quiet. They sat on the couch with blankets and lukewarm tea, the Christmas tree throwing colored shadows on the walls. Evelyn could sense that Lily was holding something back, a heavier truth hovering behind her careful sentences. Evelyn's instinct was to protect herself from more pain, but she recognized the old pattern and refused it. If she wanted a different life, she would have to stay present inside difficult moments. Lily stared at the tree and said, "My mom told me I was dead to her," as if reading from a script. The words were so cruel they sounded unreal, yet Lily's calmness proved she had heard them too many times. Evelyn felt anger rise, sharp and clean, the way it used to rise when she saw her kids mistreated at school. She clenched her jaw, not wanting Lily to feel responsible for Evelyn's reaction, because pain shouldn't create more labor. So she breathed and asked, "What did you say back?" gently, like offering Lily ownership of her own story. "I didn't say anything," Lily admitted, and the shame in her face was immediate. I just stood there, holding my stomach, like I was suddenly the worst thing that ever happened in our house. Evelyn understood that kind of silence, because she had swallowed her own needs for decades to keep peace. She remembered being young and learning that women were praised for enduring, not for speaking. And she realized Lily was being trained in the same cruel school, just with harsher teachers. Evelyn told Lily about the last Christmas she spent with her ex-husband, years before the divorce became official. She described how he sat at the table smiling politely, but his eyes were already somewhere else, calculating exits. She described how she kept serving food, kept performing togetherness, hoping effort could replace love. Then she admitted the truth she rarely said out loud. I stayed too long because I was afraid of being alone. Lily looked at her like that sentence had opened a window in a room Lily thought was sealed forever. The baby kicked, and Lily winced, pressing her hand to her belly with an exhausted tenderness. Evelyn asked if Lily had seen a doctor recently, and Lily's eyes dropped, because the answer wasn't simple. Money, insurance, fear, shame. Evelyn could see the whole invisible maze behind the hesitation. Evelyn felt a surge of protective clarity, the kind she hadn't felt since her kids were small and sick with fevers. She said, "Tomorrow, we'll figure that out." And the word we hung in the air like a new possibility. Lily's shoulders shook, and suddenly she was crying hard, silently, the kind of crying that tries not to be heard. Evelyn sat closer, not touching at first, letting Lily decide how much comfort she could tolerate. When Lily leaned into her, even slightly, Evelyn wrapped an arm around her with careful steadiness. Evelyn felt Lily's tears soak into her sleeve, and instead of recoiling, she felt something soften inside her. She realized she wasn't being drained by this, she was being awakened. Later, when Lily's sobs slowed into exhausted breaths, Evelyn whispered, "You didn't ruin Christmas." She said it slowly, as if the words needed weight to replace years of accusation. Lily looked up, eyes swollen, and for a moment she looked not 19 but much younger, like a child. Evelyn added, "Anyone who says that is speaking from fear, not truth," and she believed it with her whole body. And Lily, for the first time that night, let herself nod as if truth might be allowed to land. By the time the clock neared midnight, the house no longer felt like a container for loneliness. It felt like a place where two separate lives were carefully touching, not perfectly, but honestly. Evelyn noticed how her breathing had changed, deeper now, less defensive, as if her body trusted the room again. Lily yawned and tried to hide it, because she seemed trained to apologize for every human need. Evelyn stood and said, "I'll make up the guest room," like it was the most natural thing in the world. Upstairs, Evelyn opened the guest room door and felt dust rise from unused time. The bed had become a storage space for boxes she never unpacked after the divorce, as if she planned to remain temporary forever. She moved the boxes aside, smoothing the sheets, noticing how symbolic the act was even if she didn't say it out loud. She found an extra pillow and a quilt her mother had sewn years ago, the stitches holding quiet love in place. Evelyn realized she had been living as if no one would ever stay again, and that belief had shaped her whole house. Lily stood in the doorway, hesitant, as if stepping into a made bed required permission. Evelyn showed her the bathroom nearby and left a small nightlight on, not because Lily asked, but because Evelyn remembered fear. Lily touched the quilt gently and whispered, "This is nicer than my room at home," then looked ashamed for saying it. Evelyn felt rage again, but she kept her voice steady and said, "You deserve nice things without earning them through suffering." Lily swallowed hard, and Evelyn could see that the sentence was fighting years of conditioning. Before Lily went to bed, she lingered in the hallway, glancing toward Evelyn like she had something important to say. "I don't want to be a burden," Lily said, and the words were so rehearsed they sounded older than her age. Evelyn leaned against the wall, meeting Lily's eyes, and answered carefully, "A burden is something you resent carrying." Then she added, quietly, "I don't resent you," and she felt the truth of it settle into her chest like warmth. Lily's face crumpled with relief, and the relief itself looked like grief, finally exhaling. After Lily closed her door, Evelyn went back downstairs and stood beside the Christmas tree. She watched the lights blink and realized she had not checked her phone in hours, as if her need for validation had loosened. She thought of her children again, but the ache felt different now, less like a wound and more like a longing with direction. For the first time, she considered calling them not to guilt them, but to tell them she loved them without bargaining. The thought scared her, because love without control was something she had never mastered. Evelyn poured herself a small glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table alone again. But not the old kind of alone. She could feel Lily's presence upstairs like a gentle heartbeat in the house, changing the meaning of every quiet corner. Evelyn realized that helping Lily was not only about Lily, it was about Evelyn stepping back into her own capacity to care. She had spent years trying not to need anyone, but she had forgotten that not needing can become a prison. Tonight, the door of that prison had cracked open, and cold air wasn't the only thing coming in. As she turned off the downstairs lights, Evelyn paused by the back door where she had found Lily earlier. She imagined what might have happened if she had ignored the sound, if she had stayed sealed inside her loneliness. The image made her stomach twist, because the difference between those two outcomes was one small, brave decision. Evelyn whispered into the dark, "Thank you," unsure who she was thanking, but feeling it all the same. And somewhere deep inside her, a quiet voice answered, not with certainty, but with possibility. Evelyn woke before sunrise, not because of noise, but because her mind was unusually awake. The house was still, yet the stillness no longer felt like a verdict. It felt like a pause before something meaningful. She padded into the kitchen and started coffee, letting the familiar smell anchor her to the present. Outside, the snow had softened into a pale blanket, and the world looked newly washed, almost innocent. Evelyn wondered if innocence was still available at 52, or if it had to be rebuilt instead. She thought about Lily sleeping upstairs and felt a protective pull she hadn't felt in years. It startled her how quickly her heart had made space, as if it had been waiting for a reason to open again. Evelyn remembered her own pregnancy decades ago, the fear mixed with joy, the sense of stepping into the unknown. Back then she had people around her, even if they weren't perfect, and she had still been terrified. Now she imagined Lily doing it alone, and the thought made Evelyn's hands curl into fists. When Lily came downstairs, she moved carefully, as if walking might break the fragile peace. Her hair was tousled, her face bare, and for the first time she looked like an actual teenager rather than a crisis. Evelyn offered coffee for herself and cocoa for Lily, trying to make the morning feel ordinary. Lily smiled faintly at the cocoa, and the smile looked like someone trying on a new expression. Evelyn realized that hope often arrives as something small enough to overlook. They ate toast, and Lily stared out the window for a long time before speaking. "I keep thinking she texted me and say she didn't mean it," Lily admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn felt the ache of that sentence, because she knew the hunger for a mother's softness could last a lifetime. She wanted to promise Lily that reconciliation would happen quickly, but she refused to lie, even kindly. So she said, "Sometimes people mean it in the moment, and sometimes the moment changes later, leaving room for truth and time." Evelyn told Lily about her own mother, how love in her family was often expressed through duty rather than warmth. She described how she grew up believing good girls didn't make trouble, and how she carried that belief into her marriage. She admitted that she had confused endurance with virtue, and silence with maturity, until she didn't recognize herself anymore. Lily listened with wide eyes, as if hearing a map of the future she feared, and Evelyn felt urgency rise gently. Evelyn wanted Lily to learn earlier what Evelyn learned late. Your life is allowed to belong to you. When Lily's phone buzzed once, both of them froze, as if the sound had teeth. Lily looked at the screen and then turned it face down, hands shaking, because the message wasn't an apology. "It's my mom," Lily said, and her voice sounded numb, like the message had drained the remaining warmth from her body. Evelyn waited, letting Lily decide, because control was part of what Lily had been denied. Lily swallowed and said, "She says I embarrassed her," and the old shame returned to her face like a shadow. Evelyn reached across the table and placed her hand near Lily's, not gripping, just offering proximity. She said, "That text is about her fear, not your worth," and felt the sentence land inside herself as much as in Lily. Evelyn realized she was saying the words she had needed for decades, and that was part of her own healing too. Lily stared at Evelyn's hand for a moment, then rested her fingertips against it like someone testing ground after a storm. And Evelyn understood that the real miracle wasn't reconciliation yet. It was safety existing at all. By late morning, Evelyn made a decision she had avoided making for years. She reached outward instead of inward. She called a local clinic, asked about prenatal resources, and listened carefully while the receptionist explained options. She wrote everything down, her handwriting neat and determined, because clarity felt like a form of love. Lily watched from the doorway, stunned, as if adults had only ever used phones to threaten and shame. Evelyn realized that being cared for was a skill Lily had never been taught to accept. Evelyn also called her neighbor, Mrs. Hanley, an older woman who always waved but never crossed the invisible suburban line. It felt strange to ask for help, because Evelyn had built her pride on never needing anyone, even when she did. Mrs. Hanley arrived with a bag of baby clothes within 30 minutes, as if she had been waiting for someone to knock. Lily's eyes filled when she saw the tiny onesies, and she turned away quickly, embarrassed by emotion. Evelyn felt a quiet shock. Community hadn't disappeared, she had simply stopped reaching for it. Later, Evelyn suggested a walk, and Lily hesitated like the outside world was a courtroom. Evelyn bundled them up and guided Lily slowly down the sidewalk, the snow crunching under their boots. The neighborhood was peaceful, decorated, unaware of the private wars happening behind closed doors. Lily kept her gaze low, as if expecting judgment from every window, and Evelyn matched her pace without pushing. Evelyn understood that healing often begins with walking beside someone, not pulling them forward. They stopped near a small park where children used to sled when Evelyn's kids were little. Evelyn remembered standing here with hot chocolate, exhausted and proud, believing the years would last forever. The memory hurt, but it also warmed her, because it proved she had once been fully alive and could be again. Lily touched her belly and said, "I'm scared I'll mess it up," and her fear sounded like inherited punishment. Evelyn answered, "Being scared means you care," and the simplicity of that truth made Lily breathe deeper. When they returned home, the house felt different, less like a sealed container and more like a living place. Evelyn noticed she had begun humming softly without realizing it, a tune she didn't recognize but trusted anyway. Lily sat at the table and began folding baby clothes with careful tenderness, like each fold was a promise to the future. Evelyn watched and felt tears rise, not because it was dramatic, but because it was gentle, and gentleness had been missing. Sometimes transformation is quiet enough that you only notice it by the absence of dread. In the afternoon, Lily received another message, then another, each one sharper than the last. She didn't read them aloud, but Evelyn could see the way Lily's shoulders tightened, as if words could bruise from a distance. Evelyn asked, "Do you want to respond?" And Lily shook her head, because silence was her only shield. Evelyn didn't push, but she said, "When you're ready, we can write something together, something that keeps your dignity intact." Lily blinked, and the idea of dignity sounded new, like a word from a language she wanted to learn. That night, Evelyn stood in the doorway of the guest room and asked gently if Lily needed anything. Lily hesitated, then said, "Can you just stay for a minute?" And the request was small but enormous. Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, listening to Lily's breathing settle into something closer to calm. In the dim light, Evelyn realized she wasn't saving Lily, she was choosing to remain in the world. And for the first time in years, Evelyn felt proud of herself for something that had nothing to do with achievement. Christmas Day arrived without fanfare, and that was exactly what made it sacred in a new way. Evelyn cooked breakfast while Lily set the table, and the simplicity felt like a quiet rebellion against despair. The world outside still glittered with decorations, but inside this house, the celebration was smaller and somehow truer. Evelyn realized she had spent years performing holidays for other people, trying to earn belonging through effort. Now belonging was happening in real time, not because it was deserved, but because it was chosen. After breakfast, Evelyn brought out 2 gifts she had wrapped for herself weeks ago and felt foolish about. One was a new cookbook, practical and safe, and the other was a scarf she didn't truly need. She hesitated, then handed the scarf to Lily, not as charity, but as an invitation to receive, without shame. Lily's eyes widened, and she whispered, "No, I can't," because she had been trained to believe kindness always had strings. Evelyn said, "Yes, you can," and the firmness in her voice sounded like a boundary against a cruel world. Lily touched the scarf like it might disappear, then slowly wrapped it around her neck. The color brightened her face, and Evelyn felt an unexpected surge of joy, sharp enough to sting. She realized she had been starving for the feeling of giving without resentment, of caring without being consumed. Lily's lip trembled, and she tried to laugh it off, but the laugh collapsed into tears anyway. Evelyn didn't apologize for the emotion. She simply let it exist, because this house could hold it now. They spent the afternoon watching an old movie, the kind Evelyn used to play for her kids when they were small. Lily asked questions about Evelyn's children, and Evelyn answered honestly, not hiding her longing, not polishing her regret. She admitted she had tried too hard to be strong, and in doing so she had sometimes become distant without meaning to. Lily listened like a student, and Evelyn realized Lily wasn't only receiving care, she was learning a different blueprint for love. Evelyn felt a quiet determination form. If she could be this kind of adult now, maybe she could be it for her kids too. As evening approached, Lily grew quieter, staring at her phone as if it were a doorway she feared opening. Evelyn asked if Lily wanted to call her family, and Lily shook her head, then said, "Not yet, but maybe soon." The words, "maybe soon," carried more hope than any apology text, because they meant Lily could imagine a future beyond this crisis. Evelyn nodded, honoring the pace, because forcing reconciliation would only recreate the control Lily had run from. She said, "Peace first," and Lily repeated it softly, as if trying the phrase on her tongue. That night, Evelyn sat alone for a moment after Lily went to bed, listening to the house in its new quiet. The silence was no longer an emptiness that mocked her. It was a calm space where breathing felt safe. Evelyn thought about calling her daughter, and her hand hovered over the phone again, trembling with unfamiliar courage. She didn't call yet, but she wrote a short message, "Merry Christmas, I love you." No pressure to reply. When she hit send, she felt something unclench inside her, like a knot finally admitting it wanted to loosen. Evelyn went to sleep with a strange feeling she hadn't experienced in years, anticipation that wasn't dread. She didn't know what would happen with Lily's family, or with her own, or with the messy realities waiting after the holiday, but she knew something had already changed, because she had chosen presence over numbness, and the choice had reshaped her. Upstairs, Lily slept with one hand on her belly, the scarf folded neatly on the chair beside the bed like a small flag of worth. And in the quiet dark, Evelyn felt the beginning of a restart. Not loud, not perfect, but undeniably real. The day after Christmas often feels like a drop, like the world exhaling after pretending everything is bright. Evelyn expected that drop, expected Lily to wake in panic again, expected herself to feel foolish for opening her door. Instead, Lily came downstairs calmer, still fragile, but carrying a steadier kind of breath. Evelyn realized that safety doesn't solve pain, but it gives pain somewhere to rest, and resting changes it. She poured coffee and listened to the quiet, grateful that the quiet no longer sounded like punishment. Lily asked if she could stay a little longer, and the request carried shame even as it carried need. Evelyn felt her old fear flicker, fear of being responsible, fear of being needed, fear of losing herself in caretaking. But she recognized that fear as an old echo from a life where she never had boundaries, only sacrifice. She answered, "Yes, and we'll make a plan, because love without structure can become a cage for both people." Lily nodded, relief flooding her face like sunlight breaking through cloud. They talked about practical things, slowly, respectfully, without turning the conversation into a courtroom. Evelyn explained what she could help with and what she couldn't, drawing lines with kindness instead of guilt. Lily admitted she had no money saved, no stable place, and she feared shelters because she had heard stories that kept her awake at night. Evelyn listened and said, "This is a temporary harbor, not a life sentence," and the phrasing helped them both breathe. The truth was gentle. Lily needed time, and Evelyn needed meaning, and neither of them had to apologize for that. In the afternoon, Lily finally opened her mother's messages and read them with Evelyn nearby, not hovering, just present. There were words about shame, about neighbors, about church, about how Lily had thrown her life away, as if a life were disposable. Lily's hands shook, and Evelyn could see the reflex to blame herself rise like a tide. Evelyn said, "If your mom is afraid, she will speak in cruelty until she learns another language," and she meant it as explanation, not excuse. Lily whispered, "I still want her," and Evelyn felt that longing like a deep ache in her own ribs. Evelyn suggested they write a response, not begging, not fighting, but stating truth with dignity. They worked on the message together, sentence by sentence, trimming anything that sounded like self-hate. Lily wrote, "I am safe," then paused, and Evelyn encouraged her to add, "I am loved," even if Lily wasn't sure she believed it yet. When Lily hit send, she started crying, not with collapse, but with relief, as if she had finally spoken from her own spine. Evelyn sat beside her and let the tears come, because tears were proof Lily was still reachable by hope. That evening, Evelyn received a reply from her daughter. A simple "Merry Christmas, Mom. Love you too." The message was short, but it cracked something open in Evelyn's chest that had been sealed for too long. She didn't demand more, didn't turn it into a conversation that could collapse under pressure. She simply let it be what it was. She showed Lily the message, not to compare pain, but to model that small bridges can matter, even when they are tiny. Lily smiled, and in that smile Evelyn saw the future trying to enter quietly. Before bed, Lily said, "Maybe my mom will calm down," and her voice held cautious hope instead of desperate begging. Evelyn answered, "Maybe she will, and if she doesn't soon, you will still be okay, because hope without a backup plan can become cruelty." Lily nodded slowly, absorbing the idea that her life could be valid even without immediate permission from her family. Evelyn turned off the lights and felt a steady calm settle, the calm of a woman who has finally stopped running from her own heart. And in the darkness, she understood that her restart was not about replacing what she lost, but about becoming someone who could stay. A few days later, the snow began to melt, and the neighborhood returned to its normal pace, as if nothing had happened. But inside Evelyn's house, everything had changed in ways that couldn't be photographed or posted or proven to anyone else. Lily moved more freely now, cooking simple meals, folding laundry, humming softly when she thought no one was listening. Evelyn watched her and realized that peace is not loud. Peace is the absence of flinching. Evelyn's own body had stopped bracing for loneliness, and that was its own kind of miracle. Lily received a message from her mother that was different, not kind yet, but less sharp, more uncertain. It didn't say "come home," and it didn't say "I'm sorry," but it asked, "Are you okay?" as if concern had slipped through fear. Lily stared at the screen for a long time, tears gathering, because even a small softening can feel like rain after drought. Evelyn didn't celebrate prematurely. She simply said, "That's a beginning," and let Lily decide what to do with it. Lily replied, "I'm safe," and added, "I'd like to talk when you're ready," choosing dignity over pleading. That night, Lily sat at the kitchen table and admitted something she had been holding quietly. "I think I can go back someday," she said, "but not yet, because I need to be steady before I walk into that storm." Evelyn felt pride rise in her chest, because the sentence wasn't fear, it was wisdom earned the hard way. Evelyn nodded and said, "Home should not be a place where you shrink to survive," putting words to a truth Evelyn had learned too late. Lily's shoulders relaxed, and she looked lighter, as if permission had finally been granted from within. Evelyn began making plans too, small ones, realistic ones, but full of intention. She scheduled a visit with her son in the coming weeks, not as a demand, but as an offering of time and honest conversation. She joined a volunteer group at a local community center. Surprised by how much she missed being part of something larger than her sorrow, she learned to ask for help without shame, and that skill felt like rebuilding a muscle she had ignored for years. Evelyn realized that her life had not ended when her family changed shape. It had simply asked her to grow new roots. One evening, Lily and Evelyn sat on the porch with blankets, watching the sky turn bruised purple over quiet streets. Lily rested a hand on her belly and smiled softly when the baby kicked, as if the future was knocking gently from the inside. Evelyn felt a surge of emotion, not sadness, but recognition, because she could see that this child would be born into a different story now. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but more supported than Lily's first weeks had been. "And sometimes that difference changes everything," Evelyn whispered. "You're going to be okay," and for once, the words sounded like truth, not wishful thinking. On New Year's Eve, long after Christmas had passed, Lily said, "Thank you for opening the door." Evelyn answered, "Thank you for knocking," and the exchange felt like two lives acknowledging each other's role in the restart. Evelyn understood that Lily had not arrived to fill a void, but to reveal it, and to show Evelyn what she could do with it. The silence in the house remained, but now it held warmth, movement, and the soft sounds of someone else existing without fear. Evelyn realized she no longer needed noise to prove she mattered. She needed meaning, and meaning had found her. When the new year began, Evelyn didn't make dramatic resolutions or promise herself a new personality overnight. She simply kept doing the next right thing, making breakfast, answering messages with honesty, offering shelter without losing herself. Lily stayed in the guest room for now, peaceful, steadying, preparing for the harder conversations ahead with her family. And Evelyn, at 52, discovered the truth she wished someone had told her when she was younger and braver in secret. It is never too late to open a door. Because sometimes the life you want begins the moment you stop pretending you don't need one.